6 of the hostage bodies were found and they're dead. And it's a tricky situation because Israel is obviously on fire over it. There's massive protests happening in Tel Aviv where they're like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Get the ceasefire done, you piece of shit. Tens of thousands of Israelis demonstrated tonight in Tel Aviv protesting the Netanyahu government steps that delay the Gaza hostage deal. So yeah, like shit is completely out of control. Israeli workers will go on a major strike tomorrow. We're going to be talking about that. It's like if the politicians don't do the job, the people will. You know what I mean? It's crazy that like obviously Israelis, like Israeli society, by and large, is blaming Benjamin Netanyahu, it seems, or at least like the people that are protesting are blaming Benjamin Netanyahu for refusing to come to terms. And Bibi is like spiraling out of control. He might do some crazy shit as a last-ditch effort. So it's definitely a situation that we're going to be keeping a close eye on in the upcoming days, considering that it's seemingly coming to like a final moment. I don't know. It feels as though this is a great escalation of tensions in general. Every time there's like new information about any of the hostages that have been killed, obviously it's like the final straw, it seems, but we'll see.
Israeli military says it recovered the bodies of 6 hostages from an underground tunnel in Gaza on Saturday. The IDF has identified all 6 bodies, which include Israeli-American Hirsch Goldberg Poland. The Israeli defense.
So Hirsch Goldberg Poland is the Israeli-American whose family members spoke at the DNC. His family members, his mom and dad, are the people that spoke at the DNC, if you remember. This obviously is more personal for a lot of other people.
The defense minister said the hostages were killed just before troops could reach them.
According to the initial assessment at our disposal, they were brutally murdered by Hamas terrorists a short while before we reached them. They were abducted alive on the morning of October 7th by the Hamas terror organization.
Hamas is blaming Israel for the deaths. A Hamas spokesman said the hostages were killed by Israel's bombing.
Whoa. It's not crazy that Hamas is saying like the bombs obviously killed them. What the fuck are you guys talking about? But it's crazy that they're showing the Hamas statement in Western media. That is wild. Whoa, this is new. Chat, this is in the past 11 months of ongoing genocide. This is one of the first times where I have heard Western mainstream media openly state this is Hamas's position and it is at odds with Israel. That is crazy. I got goosebumps, dude. That is crazy. I've never actually seen any kind of autonomy or sovereignty or any kind of like individual attitude from the side of terrorist barbarians, which is the way that they are depicted usually. That is a wild change of pace.
This is blaming Israel for the deaths. A Hamas spokesman said the hostages were killed by Israel's bombing of Gaza without giving specifics. Now, a group representing the families of Israeli hostages is calling for Prime Minister Netanyahu to address the nation and, quote, take responsibility for abandoning the hostages. Netanyahu released a taped statement this morning blaming Hamas for the murders of the hostages and accused them of not wanting a ceasefire deal.
As an Israeli, I've had zero hope, but this general strike is the genuine end of this genocide. The strike is total and inevitable. What's interesting about the general strike is that there's a couple different things. Israel, and I'm sure the Israelis in the chat know this already, but Israel's economy is in the right? It is screaming bloody murder. That's number one. Number two, Israeli interior security is at an all-time low as a direct consequence of the offensive campaign that they're not only conducting in Gaza, but the offensive campaign that they're conducting in the West Bank. So they don't even have enough, in my opinion, and I don't know how they will be able to deal with this, but they don't have enough, like they don't have adequate coverage if there is a massive general strike that occurs in Israel. So like they won't even be able to bust out the APCs and shit that they've used in the Supreme Court protest that happened, a couple years prior. So like it's gotten to a point where it does genuinely feel like a change might occur. Like it does genuinely feel like a change might happen. Yeah, money is dried up. Israeli startups are folding one after another. You know, there is the Israeli economy was downgraded again a month ago. And not only that, but also you got one port that is completely bankrupt. You have the embargo from Turkey that has like actually shut off some consumer goods to Israel. Like, these are genuine changes that are happening in Israeli society that otherwise has been used to these comforts that you get from being the vassal state, the unsinkable aircraft carrier of the United States of America. It is by definition a part of the imperial core, right? Like, the way that people have designed their lives, the way that people are accustomed to certain things will create a genuine point of pressure. And I think that pressure is going to keep mounting, and we will see. Did you see this going on almost a whole year? Yes. Looking at once the bear hug happened, I was like, this is going to continue for as long as Benjamin Netanyahu wishes it. If anything, I'm shocked that there's this much protest happening against the Netanyahu government right now. It's been an entire year of this bloodshed, and in that time frame, Benjamin Netanyahu's popularity went from deeply unpopular to actually solidly popular once again. So that's something that you need to pay attention to. I have, alongside many others like Ilan Pape, who is obviously much smarter than myself, made that same sentiment before, that like the contradictions are becoming far too glaring for this Zionist regime to continue its apartheid, to continue its genocide, and that it will inevitably be the end. It might take many, many years, it might take decades, it might take weeks, but Israel's own actions, its own vendetta, its own bloodshed that it has caused has not only made it internationally a pariah state, but there is a cost to this. There's a cost that you incur when you engage on this sort of endeavor. And the smaller you are as a nation, the more reliant you are to outside help as a nation, the shorter time frame you have to continue waging war like this. That's why I've said, like, something legitimately shifted in both the societal attitudes in Israel after October 7, but I think it basically kickstarted the inevitable downfall of Zionism and more importantly, of course, the apartheid that Israel will now try to redirect back to try and defend itself.
In recent days, as Israel has been holding intensive negotiations with a mediator in a supreme effort to reach a deal, Hamas is continuing to steadfastly refuse all proposals. Even worse, at the exact same time, it murdered 6 of our hostages. Whoever murders hostages does not want a deal. For our part, we will not relent. The government of Israel is committed, and I am personally committed, to continue striving towards a deal that will return all of our hostages and ensure our security and our existence.
He's not wrong. People who murder hostages don't want to do a deal. People who murder the hostage negotiator don't want a deal. It's just that both of those things are happening, and Israel is doing them. Something to consider when he says, oh, people that murder hostages or people that murder the hostage negotiator, for example, they probably are not invested in a deal, are they? You can't continue this charade, especially when people literally are like, dude, there was a hostage deal. You're supposed to get it done. You're supposed to get it done. You're supposed to get this hostage deal done. And their family members are on the other side, you know? Like, you guys are saying shooting aid workers, or shooting, random Palestinian children. Like, people that don't give a fuck about that. Israeli society members who don't give a fuck about that still care about their family members, okay? You need to understand that. You need to understand that. People who literally think like, oh, it's not a genocide, it's an offensive campaign that we have to do whatever, are still like, dude, get the deal done. Get the ceasefire done, you piece of shit. My family members are there. My friends are there. Do you understand? This is very, very important to recognize, because does Hamas want a deal? Of course Hamas wants a deal. Come on, dude. How many months have we covered this? Of course they want a deal. And the deal has been basically on the table for 10 months. Listen to Israeli hostage negotiators. We later found out that Hamas had offered on October 9 or 10 the release of all civilian hostages in exchange for the IDF not entering the Strip, but the government rejected the offer. The Israeli government spokesman says war will continue even if all hostages are released. This war has to end with the end of Hamas, Elan Levy told the BBC. Do you understand? Hamas had already accepted the U.S. deal, by the way. Hamas says it accepts Biden's ceasefire deal without new Israeli conditions. That was a couple days ago. Hamas, there is a deal on the table America presented it months ago. The United Nations voted for the deal. Everyone wants that deal. The problem is Israel does not want the deal. And it's not even Israeli society. The only people that don't recognize what is going on are people who unfortunately live in the United States of America and are deluded by our media and Anthony Blinken and the administration regularly lying. That's why for months I've been saying over and over again, there's a deal on the table. Israel is the only one that's spoiling this deal, all the way up until like Israel literally killed the principal negotiator, which even then people looked at and thought, oh, well, he's a Hamas guy, so who gives a You are not above propaganda, okay? You are still incredibly susceptible to propaganda. Look at this reality from the Times of Israel. Hostage families say hostages would still be alive if it weren't for the saboteurs, the excuses, and the spin. On CNN, Blinken says Israel has agreed to U.S. proposal to close remaining gaps on ceasefire deal and calls on Hamas to do the same. I don't think you understand. Like, Israeli news is outflanking American news on this issue in perpetuity. These are not outlets that are anti-Zionist. The Times of Israel is not an anti-Zionist institution. Many of these outlets are writing truthfully about the situation, about the frustrations that Israeli society has. American media does not have to do that because they are far removed from the reality on the ground. So they can work to manufacture consent at the behest of the American State Department.
It's not a violent situation at all. There's not violence down here, but there's a real sense that people, as we were speaking about before, want to use this moment to find a way to communicate with the Prime Minister that they really want to see change. And the way that they're trying to communicate that at the moment is by shutting the highway. We've seen them try to shut the highway. And when I say highway, this is the main highway that swings north-south in Tel Aviv. The road's clear, but there's no traffic on it at the moment, so it's not really open. So the crowd is trying to make it clear, trying to make their protests clear, and trying to get themselves heard by the Prime Minister, Alex.
Nick, these scenes are certainly something that Hamas would like to see, these deep divisions among the Israeli government and the Israeli people. But this anger from the Israelis towards Netanyahu has been...
Bro, are you Benjamin Netanyahu? You're in America, man. You are not, like, why are you representing? Like, that is a crazy statement from CNN or from Jake Tapper. It's like, dog, you are in America. You're an American citizen. Do your job and cover the news. You literally are angling it. Like, this is what you're going to hear from Benjamin Netanyahu tomorrow. Like, why are you giving him talking points today? What the fuck? That's crazy to me that a guy is literally outflanking Israeli PR spin. Wow, these protesters are really giving Hamas everything that they want. You're insane. American media is insane, bro.
Been on full display for months. We've all been in those protests, but as you were saying, Nick, like this may be the biggest series of protests that we have seen yet, coming on the heels of this horrific news of these 6 hostages who were killed. What are the people out there telling you in terms of why they believe that their prime minister has not agreed to a deal or not done enough to reach a deal that would bring the hostages home?
Bro didn't take one step away from saying protesters are Hamas. He said the protesters are doing Hamas's bidding, chat. He literally said that. This is akin to being like, these protesters are anti-Semitic. I'm losing my mind, dude.
People here believe that the Prime Minister is looking out for his own political career and future, because if the war ends, if there's a deal and the war ends, he could find himself out of job as Prime Minister. If there was an election, he probably, or his coalition probably, wouldn't be re-elected. And if he was no longer Prime Minister, then he would face a number of criminal charges that are stacked up against him and pending. He can't be charged, and those cases can't go forward while he's Prime Minister. So people believe that he is holding on, not just as he says, because he thinks this is the best way to defeat Hamas, but because it's his own political career that's at stake. Those are the charges that many people believe and level against the Prime Minister. And certainly Yahya Sinwar of Hamas absolutely studies the political situation in Israel. He spent many years learning Hebrew while he was in jail, studying how the politics here works, looking at where divisions are, and is trying to exploit those divisions.
Dude, that's awesome. Like, that's kind of crazy. Like, CNN, bro, they should have conducted a separate investigation, not with like whatever the channels were that were like the newspapers that were like writing that had like the paid scheme to be like pro Netanyahu. That's the ongoing court case that might land him in jail, by the way, part of the reason why he wants to continue the genocide. They should have looked into CNN, bro, because oh my God, them's got CNN moving like Fox News, bro. This is crazy, dude. What the Imagine looking at a crowd of Israeli citizens who are like, bro, our friends are dying. We need them out after 11 months, and going, these guys are doing the bidding behind me of Yahya Sinwar, who's a brilliant mastermind who understands Israeli society and learned Hebrew in Israeli prison. And they're all working in his stead to dismantle the Israeli government. It's like, that's insane. Like, you are not a journalist, dude. You are that primed on like defending Israel that you are literally running defense for Benjamin Netanyahu at a time when there is obviously popular mobilization against him. Like, taking a position on defending Israel is one thing. Taking a position on Israeli domestic affairs in the most right-wing slant you possibly can is entirely different. That's crazy. The summarization of the things that unfolded right in front of our eyes is basically the CNN commentator saying these Israelis who are protesting Benjamin Netanyahu are Hamas and are doing Hamas's bidding.
Look down the street, still people. And this is what it's about. It's about the hostages. It's about the women, about the girls. This first phase of the peace deal was supposed to see 33 people released. It would have been the elderly, the very young, the sick, and all the women. And there have been videos of these young women being beaten and brutalized by Hamas on October 7th. And that's why people are here. They just want their message to be heard and acted upon.
Israeli media is near unanimously blaming Netanyahu and Israel's government for the death of the 6 hostages whose bodies were found yesterday and who were alive until very recently. Israeli media admits Netanyahu is the one refusing the deal. Why is none of that being reported in the U.S.? Reverse. Netanyahu reverse. Military pressure does not return abductees. It kills them. A dramatic change for the worse in the abductees' chance of survival. The state of Israel condemns them to death. The claim that only military pressure will bring back the abductees was never true. Now she is unfounded. Bennett. Chaotic and conflicted management and political considerations rudely invaded our holy of holies. Every Israeli outlet is screaming bloody murder, calling out Benjamin Netanyahu, and you got CNN being like, these protesters are doing the bidding of Yahya Sinwar. That's what is so crazy about American media. You got every fucking Israeli newspaper being like, Benjamin Netanyahu, you have murdered these hostages. You have murdered our sons and daughters. This is on you. CNN going, actually, these protesters are doing the bidding of Yahya Sinwar. It's fucking crazy, but it actually does show you, outside of like watching the HasanAbi broadcast, you rarely ever get a normal understanding of what the fuck's going on in Israel if you only consume American media. American media so regularly, especially CNN, and I hate to say this because I know there are a lot of great journalists over there as well in the New York Times. New York Times and CNN are just like aggressive, dude. Why are the Americans covering it up? Because we have a vested interest. American media operates as a protective barrier to the American State Department. And the American State Department is currently being guided by a bunch of rabid ultra-Zionists who end up aligning themselves with motherfucking Benjamin Netanyahu. The group representing the famous Israeli hostages is calling for Prime Minister to address the nation and take responsibility for abandoning the hostages. The recovery of the bodies of Ori Danino is a direct result of failing to sign a deal. They were all murdered in the last few days after surviving 11 months of abuse, torture, and starvation in Hamas captivity. The delay in signing the deal has led to their deaths and those of many other hostages.